The story of Joseph and his brothers is so interesting about forgiveness, not just because of the amazing, amazing work of God in Joseph's heart when he eventually forgave his brothers, every one of them without a fail, despite of what they did against him. But also there is the very good question when Joseph says in Genesis 50:20, but as for you, you thought evil against me, but God meant it unto good to bring to pass as it is this day to save much people alive. So he says to them, do not trouble yourself, do not hate yourself over this. I think in chapter 45 verse 5 he says that. And with all that evil in sight, how must it have been for his brothers to be with Joseph? And yeah, that's a very good thought for a morning jolt. I hope it will refresh your heart as well. So when we look at this story, it's so interesting because in Genesis 45 verse 4, Joseph actually says to his brothers, come near me, come near me. I am your brother Joseph. And they came near to him physically, and I'm sure they touched him, I'm sure they hugged him, I'm sure there were tears. And and all that happened. But this whole thing comes up again in chapter 50. Why? Because his brothers do not believe in their hearts that he has actually forgiven them. They say to one another, our father Jacob is dead, and now Joseph is gonna take vengeance on us. So let's devise a scheme and let's lie to him and let's pretend against something. They make up some stupid thing. And that's why Joseph says those amazing words again in Genesis 50 verse 20. He says, I am not God. It's not my place to judge you. I have forgiven you. I'm over this. But it's so interesting. He said, my brothers, come near me. But they came near him physically, but they could not come near him really. They truly could not near him again because in their hearts there was guilt and they couldn't get over it. It's so interesting that this same term is used in Hebrews 10:22. Let us draw near with a true heart in full assurance of faith, having our hearts sprinkled from an evil conscience and our bodies washed with pure water. And this is talking about drawing near to God. Okay, so like one thing about our sin is that maybe it's very hard for us to forgive ourselves. Maybe it's very hard to say, okay, I accept that forgiveness. But here is the big issue. Okay, so I could be like Joseph's brothers with God. Okay, I could be like saying over the polite right things, but I'm not accepting the power of his forgiveness and the power of Jesus's blood in my life. And see, that's the big issue. Okay, so if you're a believer, the issue is not so much are you feeling forgiven. The issue is more how powerful is the blood of Christ. And it says right here in Hebrews 10:22, having our hearts sprinkled from an evil conscience, and that is talking about the blood of Christ sprinkling our hearts. And this is his work for us in Hebrews 9:13 and 14. The blood of Christ has done this, and the power of that blood is enough to take care of our sin. But this is why it's so key to accept in our hearts the power of God's forgiveness that is greater than ours. And this is why God wants us to learn from him about forgiving, because as we are giving this to others, unmerited, undeserved, and maybe not even asked for, it's maybe unrequited. It's maybe they don't care about it, and when we do it, we are experiencing God's forgiving, and then also we learn something about his forgiveness towards us, and we can maybe rest more easy in that truth because we realize how powerful this whole thing is. But when it works well, when it goes well, then it's like this. In 73:28 it says, but it is good for me to draw near to God. I have put my trust in the Lord that I may declare all your works. So it is good for me to draw near to God. The psalmist could say that. He was not like Joseph's brothers, who were like, yeah, I'm right here, and keeping away from him, But the psalmist could really come near and could say, the nearness of God is so good to me. And can we say that if we have accepted his forgiveness and forgiving and repeatedly and constantly accepted, then yes, then sin is not a focal thing for us. Failure and guilt and shame is not a focal thing for us. And that is powerful, because that is possible because of God's powerful forgiveness. God bless your day with that truth.